Deep inside a mountain is a staggering 55-kilometer complex of tunnels. How did it play a crucial role for Allied forces in defeating the Nazis in World War II?
16,500 men deployed it.
Deep under London, how will 21st century engineering innovation
This is something to be proud of.
continue the legacy of Victorian underground pioneers?
Thousands of people were dying in these outbreaks of cholera.
And what unbelievable discoveries have been made in the depths of one of Europe's largest and most stunning cave systems?
It is extremely rare. This is the only place in the world where you can find them.
Beneath our feet lie extraordinary spaces, caves, and tunnels.
The span and the size is just crazy.
They've been designed and built by us,
This is the only one with a castle.
as well as formed by nature. But how were they created and adapted? By who? And why?
You've got to face your fears.
Throughout history, subterranean life has captured our imagination.
I feel so privileged.
We're going further and deeper to unearth the mysteries, the stories, and the secrets of underground worlds. Along Spain's southern shore, a limestone ridge dominates the coastline. Gibraltar, known as the Rock, is a fortified British overseas territory overlooking the straits between North Africa and Europe. It's just 6.8 square kilometers in area, but the size of its role in World War II is immeasurable. Beneath its distinctive landscape lie no less than 55 kilometers of hidden tunnels and caves. A subterranean city carved out by a military workforce.
16,500 men securing this area against Nazi movement.
How was this incredible feat achieved?
Largest explosion in Gibraltar with 3,000 pounds of gelignite in one single blast.
Why was the security of deep-level bunkers so critical?
In November 1942, the most important decisions were taken here in secret.
And what World War secrets have only recently been discovered?
All the men were all sworn to secrecy. They were brought up here not knowing where they were. They would have bricked up the inside.
Since first coming to Gibraltar in 1988, former British soldier Pete Jackson has become an expert on its military and underground history.
I arrived in Gibraltar not knowing at that time what I was in for. Viewing it from the outside, it is almost impossible to fathom what is actually inside the rock.
The Rock has been home to British military forces for centuries.
It's remained a British-run garrison since 1704. It's always been of key strategic importance to Britain, sitting where it does in the mouth of the Mediterranean. You control the straits, you control what's in and out. It's a very important place.
Since they arrived here, British troops have excavated through Gibraltar's limestone rock to join up existing caves and to excavate new tunnels and spaces.
Gibraltar is a labyrinth of subterranean excavations, which stretches such a time period. It stretches from the 1700s to post-World War II. The system is fantastic.
The majority of subterranean excavation on Gibraltar was during World War II. At the beginning of the war in 1939, there were approximately 11 kilometers of tunnels inside the rock. By the end of the war, troops had increased that to a staggering 55 kilometers.
It's like coming to Mecca for anybody that's an enthusiast for subterranean. We could almost call it a city underground.
Jan Parr's father, Lawrence Bolton, was one of the soldiers who helped excavate this important subterranean city. She's come to meet Pete at a place called Hayes Level to see the tunnels her father built for the very first time.
The reason I brought us in here, we're going to walk down through a series of areas that were drilled out to perform the duties of stores, which is exactly what your father was doing when he was here, was producing areas to store. Now, a couple of years ago, working in the south, I came across a sign laid on the side of the road, which I thought needed saving. And it's another reason I brought you here, because I want you to see it. It's where your dad was working. So let's take a walk down, we'll show you that on the way.
That'd be really interesting.
We can see how high we are from sea level.
The entrance to Hayes Level is over 100 meters above sea level and home to the general stores. Rations, clothes, bedding, and equipment were all kept here. Everything needed for the 16,000-strong garrison to survive during the Second World War.
A lot of this is what would have been used when your father was working here.
One of Jan's only mementos of her father is a photo of him using this type of hydraulic mining drill.
You probably recognise this here from the photograph from your collection, the one that was drilling into the ceiling.
Right, that's no lightweight piece of equipment, is it?
It isn't. I wanted you to see that sign.
Pete's research has shown that Jan's father worked on an area known as Burma Stores.
It's an area that I have a personal tie into now, because I know some of the history.
Yeah.
It's another piece of that jigsaw.
Yeah. Yes, another piece of my jigsaw as well.
It is.
Their excavations, which Jan's father was part of, were hugely important for the military purposes of Gibraltar. Jan's come to Pete's home to hear more about the role of the Royal Engineers.
The Royal Engineers were actually formed here as a unit,
What were the Royal Engineers doing here?
securing this area against Nazi movement through into the Mediterranean. It was key to the Allied support. 16,500 men deployed here to defend,
Really?
administer and prepare this place for the duration of World War II. The work we were doing was so important, Jan. I mean, had the rock fallen, then this route into the Mediterranean would have been lost to us.
The Royal Engineers blasted 43 kilometers of carefully planned tunnels and underground spaces.
As you go through the ages, the tunnels become far bigger for storage. Brigade headquarters for vehicle stores, generating stations, hospitals. You can enter the tunnels in the dockyard at sea level and make your way to the highest tunnels in Gibraltar without putting your head above ground.
To travel through the rock undetected, the Royal Engineers excavated a gigantic main road from the north to the south. They named it after a familiar arterial route back in England, now known as the A1.
And you're now on the Great North Road. They use things that people would recognise. You enter the Great North Road from its southern end at Maida Vale, which is where the A1 starts. If you continue north within the tunnels, as we would along the A1, we'll get to Peterborough. We're moving on from there within the tunnels, we get to Doncaster, and then on to Durham. So these are towns that lay themselves along the line of the Great North Road in Britain. Anybody arriving from the UK entering this tunnel system, let's say you had a young conscript you needed to go to the stores at Peterborough, he knew that if he entered the tunnel system at Durham, to get to Peterborough, he was going to have to turn south. This area is called Cpyhle. It started life before World War II as a ration store. Ration store was turned into Cpyhle generating station. And this was producing power for MOD and RAF Gibraltar. What we have here inside are 3 Fulliger engines. Engines like this can produce 1,035 kilowatts per engine. Later on, a Ruston industrial gas turbine, a jet engine, was brought in that produced a further 675 kilowatts. This generating station is an unsupported chamber.
Creating huge voids in rock requires a phenomenal amount of explosive.
The largest explosion known to have taken place on Gibraltar with 3,000 pounds of gelignite in one single blast. I was lucky enough to show a gentleman around who was in charge of drilling the largest chamber in Gibraltar, what we call Remy chambers. And he said that even his most experienced miners that were drilling it out said they didn't know what the outcome would be. They said when they blasted it, it was either going to cut a chamber or it was going to cut the rock in half.
Excavating large volumes of rock is highly dangerous, and many British soldiers lost their lives supporting the war effort, including Jan's father.
We're on our way into the rock to the spot where my father died.
Lance Corporal Lawrence Bolton, an experienced miner, was killed while excavating a Gibraltar tunnel when a detonation went wrong.
This is the entry to Burma Stores South. This is where your father would have been drilling, where that tragic accident occurred.
This is special, and it's important for me to come and just identify with not the place where he died, but the last place that he was alive.
Pete can give Jan privileged access to the warren of tunnels known only to the Royal Engineers.
I'm looking for graffiti in this wall.
So what you're saying is then my dad could actually have
He may well have left his name in the wall somewhere. The area that we're now standing in is called Upper Union Gallery, but its local nickname became Clapham Junction.
Right.
Clapham Junction because, just like Clapham in the UK, you can get almost anywhere from here. In tunnelling terms, this goes north, south, east, west, left, right, up, down, in, out.
In one direction from Clapham Junction, there's access to a lookout post with the same view of the Spanish mainland Jan's father probably saw over 75 years ago.
Amazing.
This is Jock's balcony.
Absolutely fantastic. That's where my dad's medals were presented to me by the Chief Royal Engineer.
Yeah.
And all my family were there. It was one of the best days of my life. This is the first time I've been in this part of the tunnels, and it just makes me feel closer to my father.
During World War II, future US President General Dwight D. Eisenhower set up his headquarters in the depths of Gibraltar. Operation Torch was the first mass involvement of US troops in the European North African theater of war. From deep inside Gibraltar, Eisenhower coordinated the successful invasion of French North Africa to reduce pressure on Allied forces in Europe and Egypt.
During World War II, this must have looked very, very different.
Luis Garcia works for a technology company that benefits from the security of this space, once occupied by the famous US general.
In November 1942, Dwight Eisenhower spent 12 days in one of the offices here, implementing Operation Torch. It was very important because the most important decisions were taken here in secret. So a lot of intelligence gathering was done, and the top brass was briefed of what the next move should have been. So a lot of very important decisions were taken in this room.
Eisenhower's command office was protected from enemy bombs by rock in every direction.
We are literally in the middle of Gibraltar, north, south, east, west. So we are in the heart of Gibraltar. There was a tin roof construction, so it must have been quite dismal at the time.
According to Eisenhower's autobiography, he wasn't too impressed with the lack of fresh air and natural light. However, this space in the heart of the rock is perfect for its modern-day purpose as a data center. It keeps servers safe in a climate-controlled environment.
This was refurbished in the 1980s. Walking in, obviously, you cannot but notice that you are underground, but once you're in here, it looks like a normal office. It's just that we haven't got any windows.
During World War II, Gibraltar's subterranean world kept many things hidden. One of them, a top-secret spy facility, remained undiscovered until 50 years after the war had finished. Located on the southernmost tip of the rock behind rusting metal and debris, a hidden time capsule lay untouched for half a century.
For years in Gibraltar, there was rumours about this secret chamber inside the rock that was locally called Cpyhle Cave. People were often out looking for it. But in 1997, members of the Gibraltar caving group were in this tunnel. They stopped just here to have a break, and they felt wind coming through the corrugated iron.
The tunnel's enthusiasts had stumbled on their holy grail.
So it definitely showed they were in the right place. They moved further down and took another couple of panels away, and they found the way that the men would have been put into the chamber.
The explorers had uncovered a secret cave built to conceal British intelligence troops inside the rock should Germans capture Gibraltar. The bold plan was to seal 6 naval personnel inside the hidden chamber.
They would have bricked up the inside, and people on the outside would have sealed the corrugated iron so there was no visible sign that anybody was inside.
The original plan was to hide the courageous men in here for 1 year. Provisions and equipment were supplied to last a whole 7 years. Tracer Cave was built to last, with 2 toilets and 2 ventilation systems operated by hand or a kind of exercise bike. The men could charge batteries and stay active while remaining completely silent.
It was a static bicycle, and instead of having a chain, it had got a leather band so that it wouldn't make a noise. The men would need to stay in good physical condition. To keep the noise down, on the floor there are cork tiles to deaden the sound.
By far the most exposed parts of Gibraltar's Tracer Cave were the lookout posts, one pointing east to the Mediterranean and the other west, out to the bay and the Atlantic Ocean beyond.
The original plan for the apertures was for them to be 30 centimetres wide and 15 centimetres high. When they got to the east side, this is part natural cave, there's a small natural platform on the outside, and the men could actually climb outside. They're shielded from view from the Germans anywhere, because there was a lot of foliage around it, so they can actually get outside, get some sunlight, and monitor the shipping from there. But on the western side, it was very exposed, very close to where there was a path that the Germans would be patrolling. The slot itself is only about 15 centimetres long and 2 centimetres high. They had a concrete wedge which normally would be slid in there with a tiny pinprick hole. They'd look through there, check that there were no Germans in the area, and then they'd carefully remove the wedge.
Once they'd gathered the information, they would need to transmit it back to London. But that would come at great risk.
They couldn't have an aerial sticking out of the side of the rock because it would have given away the position. So it's a flexible aerial, and during the day it would have been pulled into that pipe there. And then at night they would compress the information down so you could send a lot of information in a very short time using a specific code. They would send a very quick transmission, receive any orders, and then shut off. They wouldn't want to transmit for a long time.
Luckily for Gibraltar and the Allied forces, Tracer Cave was never needed. 300 meters above sea level and part of the Upper Rocks Nature Reserve, there's another stunning space. St. Michael's Cave is one of Gibraltar's greatest natural wonders. During World War II, the cave was prepared as an emergency hospital but never used. Today, it is a unique auditorium. And for some, like this 11-year-old choir member, a brand new magical experience.
Actually, I've never performed in St. Michael's Cave before, so this is my first time. Kind of looks like, you know, ice crystal palaces. It kind of looks like one of those, but with rocks.
St. Michael's Caves is one of those magical venues that you take for granted when you live here. This place is really something special and very unique. The acoustics are amazing.
It sounds really, really cool. This is part of our history, so we get to sing in a place that has so much background.
This is special for me to come. I've realised that it wasn't in vain. I didn't know anything about him, and I found him here.
They have this respect for the space.
Slovenia, a Central European country situated between the Alps and the Mediterranean Sea. It's 20,000 square kilometers in size, which is 20 times smaller than California, but beneath its surface are a staggering 11,000 caves. Until relatively recently, they were hidden for millions of years.
I found paradise, the biggest discovery in Slovenia, if not worldwide.
What mythical creature was found thriving in this subterranean labyrinth?
The first people that found it, they actually thought it was baby dragons.
And what else lies hidden beneath?
It's important to explore, to discover new, unknown territories.
It's pushing us forward to find places where nobody else has been.
Postonia's caves were discovered in 1818 when a local man called Lukács was given a job in preparation for a visit from the Emperor of Austria.
The task of Lukács was simply to climb as high as possible to put a welcome sign to the emperor. As he walked up the wall, he discovered a narrow passage and the rest of the cave. He said, I found paradise. It was back then the biggest discovery in Slovenia, if not worldwide.
Lukács had discovered what is, to this day, one of the largest cave systems in Europe. At 24 kilometers long, it has been created by the Pocian River, which eroded down through the limestone rock to create this stunning complex of caverns, halls, and passages.
Postońska Jama was actually formed in a lot of limestone layers, approximately 80 to 90 million years ago.
The biggest cavern carved out by the Pocian River is known as the Great Mountain.
The room itself is 100 meters long, 40 meters wide, and more than 30 meters high. Inside this big room, you have really big cave formations. Stalactites and stalagmites are formed by rainwater dripping from the ceiling. This water will be able to dissolve and transport the limestone to the inside of the cave, and the limestone will solidify into various shapes. And the one that you can see above us, we called it Nebotichnik, the skyscraper. 16 meters high, the highest one in Postońska Jama.
These incredibly precious formations have been here since long before man ever walked this earth. Some limestone layers are 90 million years old.
The average speed for the growth of cave formations in Postońska Jama is approximately 10 years for 1 millimeter. That is 100 years approximately for 1 centimeter. The oldest dated cave formation in Postońska is around 540,000 years old.
Postonia is important to geologists from all over the world who study speleology, the science of exploring and studying caves.
The geology in limestone in Postońska Jama is perfect because water will carved and formed opening space, and limestone is solid enough not to collapse.
Lukács had discovered something that not only the Austrian emperor was impressed with. The complex quickly became a hotspot for tourism. In 1872, a railway with 2,260 meters of track was laid from the entrance to the Great Mountain.
It was one way only, and it was a sort of a push trolley for 4 persons that was pushed by a guide.
The popularity of Postonia's caves brought further excavation and investment. By 1923, the train was motorized. This was the world's first cave train. And the system even had its own post office. The magic of these caves drew people from across the globe.
For already 200 years, people are coming from all over the world, you know, from China, from the States, from Greenland, Iceland, from really everywhere.
One of the biggest attractions was, and still is, a stunning limestone structure that stands an impressive 5 meters tall. It is simply called Brilliant.
The name of the formation is the Brilliant because it's so pure white. It's made of limestone, pure limestone, no impurities.
The discovery of Pocian Caves was hugely significant, not just for tourism in Slovenia, but also in the fight against one of the world's deadliest diseases. In the deepest, darkest parts of this cave system lives a mysterious creature.
The first people that found it, they actually thought it was baby dragons. So this is the biggest cave animal in the world. They're actually top of the food chain.
They can live up to 100 years and have completely adapted to living in the cave system.
They have very good sense of hearing and of smell, so that's easier to find their prey. And they prey on all the other cave animals that we can find here.
They don't have eyes. They hunt by detecting the bioelectric fields of other organisms.
Here you can see the head. If you look closely, you're going to see the heart, which is basically located in the throat. Behind its head, they look a bit like red ears. These are the external gills. The whole darker part of the body, these are the intestines. If you take a closer look at the front legs, you're going to see it has only 3 fingers. On the hind legs, it only has 2 fingers.
These creatures can live for up to 12 years without feeding.
So it is extremely rare to see cave salamanders actually eating in nature. So you have to consider yourself lucky to get such a good shot.
The more these creatures are studied, the more they reveal about themselves.
Something very special happened in this aquarium. The mama actually started to lay eggs. Yeah, she laid 64 eggs. 21 of the younglings hatched, and this is actually an event it has never before been seen in nature. We were very lucky that it happened in this aquarium.
These cave salamanders also had a genetic surprise for researchers.
They may be immune to cancerous cells, so they can't get cancer. And this is the only place in the world where you can find them. So there's still much research to be done on this subject. I mean, it's amazing to comprehend that in such an environment that anything would actually survive.
The search for secrets hidden in the depths of Pocian Caves continues. Starting from the limits of recently discovered networks, cave divers like Igor Vrahovic search for what else is waiting to be discovered.
Today we are going to do exploration of 5th sump of this cave.
For Pocian cave divers, each new expedition is another step into uncharted territories.
Caves is the only place in the earth now where nobody has been. We don't have satellites to film the underwater caves.
Diving into the unknown is time-consuming and tiring.
Complete exploration, it's going to last about 11 hours, but this underwater part is going to be like hour and a half.
It's highly dangerous.
It's like a hostile environment. You're underwater, it's dark.
But it's also rewarding. They regularly see the cave salamander in its natural habitat.
It's magical.
For the people who spend their lives here, there's a real sense of purpose to push further and deeper.
There is so much more to discover.
Across London, an ambitious engineering project is taking place.
Population of London was 2 million. We're now at close to 10 million.
Giant holes are being bored down, deep under the capital.
When they're up and running, the guys can excavate 1 metre in an hour.
They're connecting to a vast historic underground system, rarely seen by people above.
This is a massive piece of pumping work.
This subterranean work of genius has saved millions of lives.
What Joseph Bazalgette did was save a city.
You can actually see individual chisel marks.
How was this system constructed with Victorian technology?
Having an integrated sewer system, I mean, this was radical.
And how is it being future-proofed for the 22nd century and beyond?
That 40 million tonnes of sewage that goes into the river every year, that's going to stop.
"29 vertical shafts like this one in Hammersmith, West London, have been excavated to be linked up to an epic, brand new 30-kilometre underground urban wastewater system. This £4.2 billion subterranean network will run directly beneath the River Thames, serving 13 boroughs and the City of London. Sewer expert Colin Fenn is meeting engineer John Corcoran of the Thames Tideway project.
John, I've come down this huge shaft, which is so many steps deep. How far below ground are we?
Well, we're 35 metres deep, and it's a 12.5 metre diameter shaft.
How on earth did you construct such a shaft like this?
So we dig out 1 metre, then we spray a line in, we spray concrete, then we continue to do another metre, spray that line in, and carry on down. The main tunnel is 300 metres that way, or will be ultimately. We've completed this connection tunnel, so this is 300 metres long, and later on this year, underneath the River Thames, the larger main tunnel with the tunnel boring machine will come through, eat off the side of our tunnel, just the very end of it.
Whilst the larger main tunnel boring machine spans over 10 metres, the smaller feeder tunnels need their own agile tunnelling equipment.
This is the specialist excavator we use. We call it a Schaefer excavator. It runs on electric. And the two big features of this which make it good for tunnelling, one is the special knuckle joint on the arm here, which means you can dig that tunnel profile. And the second one is all the spoil comes into this conveyor system, so the excavator driver doesn't have to keep rotating. And the guys can excavate 1 metre in an hour. We actually have 4 or 5 dumper trucks. This machine keeps them busy, basically. They keep loading it and they take it away as quick as possible. And then it's taken away by surface muck wagons and used for land reclamation. Now, this tunnel has been designed to last 120 years, and we want to absolutely minimise the amount of maintenance because it's very, very difficult to go into a sewage system once it's operational.
Currently in London, when there's heavy rainfall and the storm drain network fills with water, it floods the sewer system, meaning raw sewage escapes into the Thames.
The pumping station here is activated on average once a week. So over the course of 1 year, that's 2 million tonnes of sewage going into the river, which we will intercept.
So any fish in the river, anyone canoeing, anyone dipping their hand in the Thames is likely to have a bit of a surprise 50 days of the year.
I've talked to people locally around Hammersmith and they know when the sewage is coming out because it kills the fish. We're going to do something about this and have this fantastic project. Within a few years' time, we'll capture all that sewage and we'll have a much better, cleaner River Thames.
This is a massive, forward-thinking underground engineering project for the public and environmental good. It builds on the groundbreaking work of visionary engineer Joseph Bazalgette, who created London's existing sewer system back in the 1860s.
Well, if you look back when Bazalgette designed his 150 years ago, the population of London was 2 million. We're now at close to 10 million.
One reason for Thames Tideway's construction is the rapid expansion of London over the last century. Joseph Bazalgette's sewers were built because London was growing, but more importantly, because people were dying. Sir Peter Bazalgette is Joseph's great-great-grandson.
It was in about 1831 that the bacterium cholera arrived from India. Lots of people were drawing their drinking water from the Thames, but their sewage was flowing out of their houses into the Thames via the tributaries. They were drinking their own excrement. Thousands of people were dying in these outbreaks of cholera. It actually would have got worse and worse and worse had there not been a cleansing of the city and a city-wide solution.
This is Crossness Sewage Pumping Station on the south side of the River Thames, away from the city. It's where Bazalgette's mammoth subterranean system culminates.
This is a cathedral to municipal engineering. We're at the end of Bazalgette's major sewage improvement works that he'd started in 1856 across London. So here we have a map of London showing the Bazalgette sewer network all in place. So firstly, in the north of London, there are 3 main sewers. They all meet at Abbey Mills pumping station at the top. Then in South London, we have 3 more, and they come flowing down, takes the waste and puts it out to Crossness, where it then hits the more tidal reaches of the Thames, and it can hold the waste and then release it as the tide goes out. Crossness was the southern guardian of that sewer network. It was a matter of huge pride, and at the opening we saw Prince Albert and lords and ladies came here, so it was something to boast about. It wasn't going to just be an anonymous building hidden away in the marshes. We're surrounded by the cast iron tracery, and then all around here we've got beam engines with pumps that are being used to move the effluent that's been taken through the sewers.
The pumps were used to lift effluent from the sewers deep underground. It was held in pens, and then 75,000 tons of sewage would be released with the estuary tide out towards the North Sea.
This is a massive piece of pumping work. Everything here is just solid. It's just gorgeous. This is something to be proud of.
Peter. Hello. So, Colin, here's our Cathedral of Sewage. Bazalgette was hardly talked about, hardly known, compared to, say, Brunel, because most of his achievements are underground and you can't see them. There was an article in one of the newspapers, I think it was The Observer, that called him the drain brain. And then, having read that, I realised quite how profound his achievements were. London at the time had a population of between 2 and 2.5 million. And when Bazalgette finally got the money to execute the scheme, he overspecs the whole scheme for a population of about 4.5 million. It allowed London to grow as a sort of economic entity. What Joseph Bazalgette did was save a city.
He was a true visionary, and Joseph Bazalgette enabled a healthy London to thrive. But his underground engineering genius wasn't a first. Decades before, in the 1830s, 200 miles north of London, in the city of Liverpool, a civil engineer called James Newlands was about to create the world's first integrated subterranean sewer system.
If we were to think about Liverpool in the 1830s, it was filthy. You had butchers slaughtering animals in the street, fishmongers throwing the guts around and hoping for a heavy rain to maybe wash them down into the Mersey. There was a sanitary report and it highlighted Liverpool as being particularly filthy. The medical officer noted that the poor were living in dreadful conditions in basements. In fact, he said, "I found them inundated with fluid filth which had oozed through the walls from adjoining ash pits and cesspits."
As an important port for the industrial heartlands of the north of England, Liverpool's reputation for squalor and disease started to affect its trade as a port.
In 1847, James Newlands was appointed the first borough engineer. From this, it went from the basest form of filth and disgusting environment to really the heights of modern sanitary thinking. James Newlands turned out to be, in some ways, the sanitary saviour of Liverpool, didn't he?
Yes, he definitely did. When he arrived in Liverpool and was appointed, he targeted a lot of specific issues such as street lighting, pavements, communal bathhouses, which all played the small part of ultimately cleaning up Liverpool in conjunction with a major sewage system which he created, the first of its kind.
Construction began in 1848, and by 1851, 27 kilometres of main sewers had been built. This increased to a staggering 480 kilometres by 1869.
The construction of the world's first integrated sewer network completely changes the health and the outlook for Liverpool.
The fact, I think, the average age before systems like this were built, life expectancy in Liverpool was 19. However, just by building these and putting these in place, that over the 10-year period it took to construct have doubled. The life expectancy doubled.
Liverpool's pioneering subterranean sewer project had transformed the lives of its people, and it wasn't going unnoticed.
This was a model that was then going to be picked up by other towns and cities, most notably across London, to manage this new modern sanitary revolution. It was designed to last. It was designed to allow the city to grow.
This was the standard design in the Victorian era, and it was built using an open cut method, so this would have been exposed, built by the various trades and labourers, and then eventually, once it's complete, then they backfill the ground above it. You can actually see individual chisel marks where each individual stone was handcrafted.
Because we've got bricks on the bottom and then a stone arching over the top.
Yes.
And then that comes onto a brick channel on the bottom that's carrying the effluent around.
Yes, it keeps the solids in the middle where the velocity is the greater. The actual gradient is 1 in 113, so that actually gives it the potential to self-cleanse, so the floors will be enough to ensure that it's kept as clean as you can see.
At peak flows, this sewer can handle 32 million litres per hour, enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool in 3.5 minutes.
The age that it is at 150 plus years and the condition and the cleanliness of it suggests he might have had a good idea.
This was the first time anyone had contemplated having an integrated sewer system across anywhere in the world. I mean, this was radical.
It was a system that many other people followed after, and ultimately it was built for a reason, it achieved that reason, and it's still standing, so it is quite magnificent.
The remarkable thing about Liverpool sewers is that we can still see parts of that original Victorian brick network integrated into modern concrete systems.
The Victorians created revolutionary underground networks that made Britain healthier and allowed it to grow.
We need today to understand, as much as they did in the Victorian era, that great public works are a legacy.
I mean, this is something that people couldn't have imagined years ago. The technologies, the way that it's all come together.
I'm looking forward to that day when we start seeing wildlife coming into the river, you know, and who knows, we could see dolphins coming up and down the Thames, and won't that be fantastic?
This infrastructure has been designed to last not just our generation, not just our children's generations, but for generations beyond that.